Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Vedic Astrology Podcast. My name is Fiona Marks. Today, we are journeying for the final time on our solar transit series. We're going to have a look at the Rasi of Aquarius. And as the sun enters Aquarius, it gives us a chance to connect with this Rasi. Perhaps that is the experiment that we have been running all year. We began in Pisces after we were joined by Pratyush Bhattacharya, and he spoke to us about decoding zodiac. We've stepped up to the challenge to connect with each Rasi in a perhaps deeper way or more visceral way by spending 1 month connecting to each Rasi. And Aquarius will be our final episode in this series. So it's bringing together the end of a project. And as we normally do, let's begin by connecting with some of those qualities that are related to Rasis, in this case to the Rasi of Aquarius. Now, as we're not talking about the transits, particularly those, you can catch up with me on my Patreon account. Every 2 weeks we get together for moon and transits, and we have a look at what is going on in the sky. And when we have time, we connect that with people's charts, the people that are present there, and we talk about what aspects and what things might be expected to be experienced in the coming couple of weeks. So in the podcast episodes now, we're not looking at any specific transits. We're just looking at the generic combination of the sun moving through Aquarius. So a good place to start is with the imagery that we associate with Aquarius. And in this case, it is a jug of water with the water being poured out, returning all of those resources to the collective. So it's quite a beautiful imagery. Those of you who follow the podcast for a long time will know that quite some episodes ago, some seasons ago, I did a whole episode on Aquarius because I do find it fascinating. And we noticed that if one is an Aquarius Ascendant, that the first house is an Aquarius ruled by Saturn. And then as we follow our way all around the houses, it is actually the 12th house that is also ruled by Saturn. So for Aquarius Ascendant, we even have this idea of linking the self with selflessness and linking the self with charity. And we see it right here in the imagery of the jug of water pouring out. This is not somebody who is taking the water away from the lake or the ocean or the well or wherever they got it. This is someone who's returning the water. And it speaks about that selfless nature of Aquarius. And if we think about where it comes in the zodiac journey, when we think of it as a hero's journey, this hero has gone on a long quest, and in the 10th sign, which was Capricorn, the hero has faced the great battle and overcome whatever it was that was impossible. He's achieved the quest, and therefore Aquarius is where we bring those spoils back to the village or to the start of the story. So here is the hero returning the Holy Grail, or whatever item it was that needed to be freed in this story, and pouring it out like the water from the jug. So it is that fixed nature of Aquarius that we're not going out and doing anything. The hero's done all of that, all of those cardinal signs of taking action. And it's also not those mutable signs of learning from our quest, from our journey, and integrating and trying out new things. This is a fixed sign of all of the wisdom and the knowledge, the life experience, the skills that we've gained from the zodiac journey is being contributed now for the greater good. And the jug imagery is a small human-sized jug. It's not some epic big tank on a wheelbarrow or anything like this. This is a human-sized amount that we can either take with us or that we can return. And this says something about Aquarius being a Saturn sign that Aquarius is very aware of the restrictions of the natural laws and living in a sustainable way with those restrictions. So being harmonious to what is natural. And we can see that in the size of this jug, that it's about taking what you need and it's about giving to others what you've learned and what you have and contributing fully your experience. And in that way, it reminds me of human cells. Maybe this goes back to being a massage therapist. We had to learn a bit of anatomy and physiology to be certified. One of the things that really struck me about human cells is the way that they all have their unique roles to play in this community that we call our body. So we've got bone cells and heart cells and blood cells and nerve cells and all of these different little factories that produce their contribution to the functioning of the body. And I think this says so much about Aquarius, actually. But what it reminded me of, the jug reminds me of, that human cells are floating around in this interstitial fluid that is where the oxygen, the nutrients, all of the exchange happens in this fluid. So the cells open and close so they open to take in those nutrients that they need and to let out the product that they've created in the factory and to let out the waste from the cell. And then they close and they do their work, and then they open and take on more nutrients and keep creating their output. But they don't hoard the resources. So if it's a time like maybe you've just eaten or whatever, and there's plenty of nutrients flowing around in the fluid, the cells don't preemptively think, well, I might need that for later, so I'll take it now and I'll hold on to it. There's just no mechanism to do that. They can just take what they need. And then if it comes a time when there aren't those resources available, they just have to wait. And there's nothing that they can do to hoard or to have a stash of nutrients and requirements for their factory. So I think this says a lot about Aquarius as well, that it's about, Aquarius reminds us it's the skills of taking what you need and contributing everything that you have. And also the skills of working for a greater good. So these human cells, they're doing their production, but that production is not really for the cell's own benefit. They're contributing to something much larger, which is this organism, this body that I'm using. But they might not even really be aware of the role, the enormous overall organism. They're just aware of the part of that they can contribute. And Aquarius is a little like that as well, that would just do our work well and contribute fully. And I think that this also contrasts with Aquarius being on the opposite side of the zodiac to Leo. So there's a continuum between Leo and Aquarius, which is about, Leo is all about the king and the legacy, so the leader, and accumulating a creative contribution that will last after my passing, creating this legacy, this kingdom. And Aquarius, all the way on the other side, is in fact very humble and just contributing my small part, or the small part that contributes to the overall whole. But in some ways, it's an anonymous contribution, and there's no point in a cell becoming the king of all cells. There's no hierarchy of cells, really. So I think this speaks about the different leadership approaches of these two signs and the different hierarchies or structures that they have. So we see the king, top of the pyramid hierarchical structure of Leo, whereas with Aquarius, we have much more that flat, everybody's contributing 100% of what they are capable of contributing. And all of them are doing that equally to contribute to a greater good, to a larger whole. And I think that we see this also in the environment and the environmental movement, that living in harmony with the earth and its environmental restraints in a sustainable way is a very Aquarius manifestation. It helps us to understand Aquarius, that there are just certain rules about how this ecosystem works, and we're a part of that, and we can like the rules or not like the rules, but that is just how the earth is. And we can see that there's a growing awareness of perhaps that humanity is not living in a stable, sustainable way, and that there's going to be a great cost for that. And this is a cause of great fear, and it seems very clear to people that we're not living in a sustainable way. But the environmental movement, in a way, struggles to bring everybody on board and along with that, because it doesn't have those skills that Leo has in terms of the visionary leadership, the painting an idea of what we're heading towards and how wonderful it will be. And therefore, you should sacrifice some of your effort to come on board and build this vision with me. Leo is very good at leading from the front and leading with a vision that unites everyone. And Aquarius doesn't have that visionary skill. So the environmental movement can struggle to bring the whole population along with it, because to the whole population, it sounds like restrictions that I won't be able to do what I want to do, and everything will be worse and it'll be more difficult, and I have to use more of my awareness to live in that way, and I have to give up some of my freedom of consumerism or travel or whatever it is that I want to choose personally for myself. So when the environmental movement is gathering its people, it doesn't necessarily have a vision that is inspiring, even though its fundamental driving force is very clear and very well placed, and many people agree with. So I think that says a lot about Aquarius as well. And so this idea of human cells or ecosystems in and of itself says something about Aquarius, because Aquarius is also the 11th sign. And we know that the number 11 relates to those large networks and systems, things that are interconnected with each other. So we have here, either in the human body, all the cells that are connected, or in the ecosystem, all of the different components of the environment that are connected. It's a very Aquarius thing. And if we think about the cells in the human body, they don't hoard things, they don't stash things away, and they also don't try to be the king cell or the most important cell. And in fact, they're not really looking to create a legacy. There is a mechanism to pass on the DNA or the factory production. We make sure that there will be cells that can take on that task once this cell is no longer useful. But it is really important in the body that cells that are not working anymore or are damaged in some way, that they do naturally die, pass away, and leave the system. Because if we have those cells that are hoarding and accumulating and not dying, we then get that tumor thing, don't we, of something that's just growing and growing and growing, but with no purpose. It's sustaining itself, the cell, and all the cells that have got that mutation are sustaining themselves and not dying, but they're not then contributing to the function of the body, and they can actually be causing ill health. So it's interesting how in Aquarius, in these systems, there's an inbuilt humility and a life cycle that things naturally need to pass away and be recycled and leave the system. This speaks a lot about that humble nature of Aquarius, and also the natural laws, that there's just no negotiating with those things. It's just a natural cycle of life. So from that analogy for me about the human cells, we can really take that Aquarius is about contributing what you have and then leaving when you're no longer required, because Aquarius is that stepping stone to Pisces, which is transcending the quest entirely and leaving this quest, going on to whatever next journey that this consciousness is going to experience. So that's why Aquarius has this acceptance of doing its job, contributing all of the spoils from the quest, giving whatever it produces, contributing that. if we think about Aquarius in those Gemini sutras, it talks about tanks and storage, grain storage. So what can we do, having been through a long quest, what can we do to share our wisdom and the learning from the school of hard knocks, the things that we've learned from experience? How can we contribute to make everybody's suffering a little bit less? So if we can make somewhere to store grain or to store water, that can get people through hard times in their life. So it's a very beautiful part of Aquarius, is this idea of contributing for the common person, not for my subjects who obey me and are loyal to me, but for the every person, for the everybody. And Aquarius is like that, isn't it? How can the network improve everybody's experience? If we think about networks in terms of technology and communication, they really have flattened out access to information and to services, so that you and I on our device, we don't need a travel agent. We've become our own travel agent. We book our travel. We've become our own bank manager. We make our own movements of payments and money within our own account. And we can do so many things. We don't need an expert. We don't need that one person to go through, that king that we have to go through to get that done, that authority. We've all been empowered with access to the network to be able to do each of those things that previously needed an expert. So Aquarius has that technology and connection energy, but with the goal of everybody being empowered and being connected. And that's where Aquarius also has that, on one level, a utopian vision of we're all equal. We're all contributing what we can, and we're all receiving the benefits of everybody's contribution. So if there is any enticing and inviting vision of Aquarius, it's utopian. But of course, then it also the same could be said of Aquarius, that it has that hive mentality or that commune where everybody is a cog in a large machine. And if you, individual cog, can't function or don't work or whatever, you could be replaced by another cog, because the individual is not what's important. It's the collective overall. So both of those things are true about Aquarius. And the final thing to say about Aquarius perhaps is that it belongs to the Sudra class in the caste system. So that's the laborers, the servants, the people who do the work, maybe do the hard work or do the dirty work. And it is through working that they receive their compensation. And this also speaks to it being a sign that is governed by Saturn, that it is in the background doing the hard jobs, and it doesn't really want the glory, doesn't really want to be at the front and accoladed or anything like that. But it is essential that in some areas of our life, we are humble and authentic and do the hard work that needs to be done. And that's why Aquarius is in that Sudra class. It helps us to understand how to live naturally with these natural restrictions, and how important it is within the natural world that waste is managed and removed from the system. And Saturn is very important in that process of letting go and accepting the decaying of life and making sure that we don't hold on longer than we need to. So some parigraha as well. And now that we've understood a little bit about the qualities of Aquarius, we can move towards thinking about how does the sun work with Aquarius. And even in our conversation already, we can see that there's maybe not a lot of natural connections between the sun and Aquarius. And in some ways, that's because the sun rules Leo all the way on the opposite end of the zodiac, and Saturn rules Aquarius over here in this part of the zodiac that we're talking about. So they're on the extremes of each other, of that continuum already. But they do have one thing in common, which is that The sun is considered to have masculine energy, and Aquarius is also considered to be a masculine sign. So both the sun and Aquarius are trying to achieve things in the external world. And these contributions that Aquarius are making, they are to improving the world for everyone in line with natural orders and natural laws. So they do both share that in common. But apart from that, there are quite some distinctions. So Aquarius is an air sign, whereas the sun would be associated more with a fire, being a fire planet. Perhaps we can think of the sun as being inspiring and maybe dharmic or maybe even sattvic, that it's got that auspicious vision for humanity. Whereas maybe Aquarius has more the tamas approach of focusing on problems, as we were talking about, being that worker or laborer and servant who just deals with the things that are broken, not working, need to be cleared out. And we contrasting the king with the servant. So it's really at opposite ends of the hierarchy of the kingdom. And that perhaps where the sun is visionary, perhaps Aquarius has that looking down nature that Saturn has, perhaps, or maybe looking down horizontally to solving problems and dealing with the real world. So not a lot of natural matches between the sun and Aquarius. And this is why, just like we spoke about in Capricorn, in fact, it may be a little difficult to connect with Aquarius through the transit of the sun because they're not a really natural match with each other. So they don't line up so that we're not getting those harmonious resonances between each other. But this is our project for the year, is to go through and have a look at each Rashi as the sun goes through. So we're going to continue, even if this is maybe not the most natural match. And we must remember that with this particular transit, the sun is going to be on the opposite side of the zodiac from where it is normally ruling Leo. So for the first time in our year-long journey, every combination is going to involve the opposites of the continuum. So if the sun is your first lord, it's going to be in the 7th house, so 1 and 7. If Aquarius is your first house, then you're going to have your 7th lord transiting through the first house. And this continues for every combination of ascendants, that we are mixing together the two ends of the continuum between the dharmic and the karma house lords and houses together, or we're mixing together the moksha and the artha houses together. So we're going to have those continuums being emphasized throughout whichever ascendant you have. It's going to be a month of opposites. If that just means we're going to learn a lot through this process. And let's begin. Let's see what we can find out. Beginning with Aries, if you are an Aries ascendant, then the sun actually rules the 5th house of your birth chart. So we can associate the sun with things like creativity and children and grace and romance. The sun is going to be interested in all of these things and how to facilitate those in the chart. And this month, it's going to be transiting through the 11th house of the chart, all the way over in Aquarius. So we're getting a 5th lord in the 11th house for this month transit through Aquarius. And the 11th is all about networks. It's all about recognition and belonging, really. So it's where we get certified in things. And it's about our passive income. So in some ways, we could think about the 5th lord is often associated with investments, and the 11th is our passive income. So maybe there's the gains are going to come from that, something like that. But in this particular case, with our assignment, we want to think about how the 5th lord, the sun, is trying to meet its need for creating a legacy in this sign of sustainability. And perhaps it tells us that if the king gains that 11th house role, then the kingdom has to be sustainable for an Aries Ascendant. And it's interesting that for Aries Ascendant, the gains are not in a Jupiter sign. So it's telling us something about Aries, this Ascendant that has the impulse to start the whole story of the zodiac. The gains are going to come in a Saturn sign, not in a Jupiter sign. So perhaps the reflection question for Aries Ascendant this month might be, where do I need to be more realistic and sustainable in relation to my legacy, my children, my romance, my creativity? So maybe that's a question to think about to help us tap into the sun transiting through Aquarius this month. If you are a Taurus Ascendant, the sun rules your 4th house, and it's going to be transiting through the 10th house of the chart. So we get the part of the chart that was underneath the earth at the time of the birth is transiting through the zenith of the chart, the top of the chart. And we have here a moksha lord. The sun is a moksha lord for Taurus Ascendant, and it's going through an Arthur house. So we could think about how the home and work are mixing together. We can think about how our spirituality, how our evolution and our recognition are going together. And our 4th lord, the sun, is trying to meet our needs for inner peace through work and external activity during this one transit we're just talking about for this Aquarius period. So if Taurus wants to be at peace in their work, maybe Aquarius is sharing that they'll have to follow the laws of nature. And that is it telling us that for Taurus, happiness at work comes from doing work that is for the all, for the collective, for contribution. And we need to remember that for a Taurus Ascendant, Saturn rules 9 and 10, which is a natural Raja Yoga. So maybe this is true that for Taurus Ascendant, there's meaning and purpose in work. And through Aquarius, through being aligned with those natural restrictions, that true inner happiness can come for the 4th lord, the sun. So maybe the question to reflect on is, would my work be more comforting and a true source of peace if it was more sustainable and working for the common good? That's the reflection question for Taurus this month. For Gemini Ascendants, the sun is the 3rd lord, and it is going to be transiting through the 9th house. So again, we have that continuum of the 3rd and the 9th, and this continuum brings to mind knowledge for me. It's like, how do we get knowledge? Do we get it through experimentation and learning by doing, making mistakes, being adventurous and courageous? Or do we get it from existing traditions, the 9th? Do we get it from the research and knowledge that has gone before us through our higher education system and through having faith in our teachers? The 9th is the guru house as well. So here we have the sun in this transit is going to be emphasizing the two ends of this knowledge spectrum. And how much do I investigate and how much do I surrender to existing knowledge? So the sun is trying to meet our needs of discovery. That's what the 3rd lord is doing. But it's doing it here within the restrictions of natural laws. And Gemini is the 3rd sign of the zodiac, and this is the 3rd lord. And it's going to find meaning and purpose in an air sign. So maybe it's about taking all of our discoveries and contributing them to the network, plugging them into that interconnectedness of Aquarius. So a reflection question could be, will my exploratory nature find its sense of purpose in examining and surrendering to the natural laws. So that could be a reflection question for Gemini. For Cancer Ascendant, the Sun is the second lord. It rules the second house. And it is going to be transiting through the 8th house of the chart. So we're linking, the second house is often associated with resources and responsibilities and our income, the work that we do to earn income. And it's going to be transiting through the 8th house of other people's money. The 8th house is often associated with wills and legacies and insurance, maybe legal payouts. So there's a money connection there, but also there's like a responsibility and a transformation, having a conversation with each other, because the 8th is a moksha house after all. So the Sun is going to be trying to meet the needs for second house things like survival and taking responsibility. And it's going to be trying to meet those through this sustainable sign of Aquarius. So a reflection question might be, can I meet my responsibilities by transforming my relationship with natural restrictions? For Leo Ascendant, the Sun is the first lord. It rules the first house of the body, the life path, and the personality. And it's going to be transiting through the 7th house. So this is linking the self with others and the self with all of our exchanges and transactions. So that value, how do I know what's valuable in my transactions with others? It could also be linking the self with foreign places, because the 7th is the furthest away from the birth location of the ascendant. And the first lord here, the Sun, is trying to meet the need to know the self through nature and the collective of Aquarius. So a question might be, how do the restrictions of reality and the reality of other people, how do those restrictions help me to truly know myself? Might be a reflection question for Leo ascendants to understand the Sun's transit through Aquarius. For Virgo Ascendant, the Sun is the 12th lord, a moksha lord, and it's going to be transiting through the 6th house of daily work and the things that we give our attention to, the routines that mean that we don't have to deal with debts and obstacles and enemies if we keep our attention on our daily tasks. So when we think of the 12th, we can often think of charity. And when we think of the 6th, we can think of service. So maybe there's a natural connection a little bit there. The 6th can be associated with debt, and the 12th can be associated with the losses of that, with the letting go of that. So maybe it's extinguishing those debts. And there's also a bit of a connection here between the 6th being related to health and the 12th being related to seclusion. So maybe some healing in seclusion. And let's remember that the Sun is the 12th lord. It's trying to meet our need for transcending. And in Aquarius, is it going to try to meet that need for transcending by serving in a sustainable way? So a reflection question might be, how can my spiritual liberation be served by surrendering to the laws of nature? For Libra Ascendant, the Sun is the 11th lord of gains and belonging and certification, and it's traveling through the 5th house of a Libra Ascendant chart. So some grace maybe with our visas or passports or PhD recognition, whatever certification you're looking for at the moment. Maybe there's some grace. Maybe we're going to link investment in gains or link our children and aspirations. We can notice, if you're listening to the whole podcast, I don't know whether you drop in just for each ascendant, but if you're listening to the whole podcast, we can notice now we're having a conversation here with Aries Ascendant as well, because Aries Ascendant was the 5th lord traveling through the 11th. Libra Ascendant is the 11th lord traveling through the 5th. The difference here is that the Sun is wanting to look after 11th house goals. So it's trying to meet the need for recognition and belonging. in a sign of stability. And so if we think of Libra about being all about trade, if it's the king of traders, this trader, if he wants longevity, if he wants a legacy, he's going to have to invest those gains with the laws of nature in mind. And we have to remember that for Libra Ascendant, Saturn is ruling the 4th and the 5th. So this is again a Raja Yoga. So perhaps it really is telling us that the trader, the merchant, the business person can gain from Aquarius the discipline of investing their gains in something sustainable. Will make them a merchant that goes on and on and on. So a reflection question for Libra Ascendant might be, will the grace I need in relation to my recognition and gains come from surrendering to the restrictions of reality? Could be our reflection question for Libra Ascendant. For Scorpio Ascendant, the Sun is the 10th Lord. Leo is at the top of the chart at the time of the birth. And it's going to be transiting through the 4th house. So we have here a conversation between Scorpio and Taurus are sharing this combination of 10 and 4. We know that the 10th relates to fame and career, and that the 4th relates to our heart center and to the moksha that's available from inner contentment. And really, we have here the Sun, the 10th Lord, trying to meet the needs of work and fame through inner reflection and peace. So if Scorpio wants to be at peace in their work, they're going to have to follow the laws of nature according to Aquarius. And does this mean that for Scorpio, happiness at work comes from working hard for all? So a question might be, would my work-life balance be served by surrendering to the wonder of nature and her laws? And it makes me think of the contrast between the workaholic, which is maybe where that work-life balance is too much on the work side. And we know that Scorpio is a Mars ascendant, so might have that tendency or that propensity to work too much or burn out because so great at taking action, so logical, so valued by all of us other ascendants that we burn out our Mars ascendants. So I'm contrasting the workaholic approach of giving so much to the external work and recognition and fame with, can we bring in something about the 4th house? What is it like when one becomes a mother and all of one's work is in the home, and we are working just as hard in making the home a sustainable, nurturing, loving environment for everybody with a lot of hard work. But our focus is all of that work is for everybody's harmony or everybody's peaceful experience of their nest, of their home. So perhaps there's something to reflect on for Scorpio Ascendant this month as we transit the Sun through Aquarius. For Sagittarius Ascendant, the Sun is the 9th Lord of purpose and meaning, and it's transiting through Sagittarius Ascendant's 3rd house. So once again, we're having a conversation now with Gemini, where we talked about this knowledge continuum. How much do I learn by experimenting? How much do I learn by learning from others, from the guru, from having faith, from the traditions, from the higher education system? And how much should I investigate things? How much should I surrender to what my teacher is telling me? That's what this continuum is about. In this case, though, the Sun is the 9th Lord, so it's going to be trying to meet the need for purpose and meaning. That's what it's focused on. And it's going to be doing that in Aquarius by exploring within the restrictions of natural laws. And Sagittarius is the 9th sign of the zodiac. The Sun rules the 9th house of a Sagittarius Ascendant. So we're going to see that this meaning and purpose is quite emphasized for Sagittarius, but it's finding the stimulation for this meaning and purpose in the reality of nature. through Aquarius. So the question might be, will my devotion to purpose and meaning find freshness in nature? Could be a reflection question for Sagittarius. For Capricorn Ascendant, the Sun is the 8th Lord, and it is transiting through the 2nd house. And the 8th Lord is a moksha lord about transformation and about the evolution that comes through facing our deepest fear or the deepest, darkest unknown. It can also relate to sudden and unexpected things. And it's transiting through the 2nd house of resources and responsibilities. So once again, we see this link between responsibility and transformation, just like we had for Cancer Ascendant. So these are the two signs in conversation with this Sun transit this month. And the Sun is the 8th Lord. So it's going to be trying to meet the need for transformation in a sign of reality and sustainability. The 2nd house is all about speech. So I'm wondering about speaking about transformation as a natural law. We talked about that, didn't we, with the cells and their natural cycle. So reflection question, how can I face my fears and transform through speaking about natural restrictions? Maybe that's a reflection question for Capricorn. Then for Aquarius itself, we have the Sun as the 7th Lord of the other is going to be transiting through the 1st house. So this is in a conversation with Leo where we have the 1st Lord transiting through the 7th. For an Aquarius Ascendant, we have the 7th Lord transiting through the 1st. It links the self and others. It links the self with transactions and how those exchanges happen, and perhaps links us with foreign places. In this case, the Sun is the 7th Lord, so it's going to be trying to meet those needs for exchanging and for trading value in a sustainable way. So the reflection question might be, how are others like myself as we share this Earth spaceship together? Could be a reflection question for Aquarius. And it is interesting that the inauguration will happen while the Sun is in Aquarius, because this is like the king being crowned, but in the sign of Aquarius. And is the king working for the common person? And it makes me wonder about whether this is why the United States have their inauguration in this particular time of year, because the president arose from the overthrowing of a king and the creation of a constitution. And normally the president devotes him or herself to the constitution, to serving the people. And so maybe it makes sense to do that when the Sun is transiting through Aquarius, the ultimate example of how the leader is one of the many, even as they take their oath. So perhaps that's what we might see with the Sun transiting through Aquarius there. And if we are talking about Pisces Ascendant, then the Sun is the 6th Lord, responsible for our daily routines and our habits and our work that we do, the hard work that we do every day, that we give our attention to, like an artisan who every day perfects the product that they're working on. And it links together ideas, as we spoke about when we talked about Virgo. It links together the ideas of service and charity, because 6 and 12. It also links together debts and losses. So maybe dealing with our debts, letting go of our debts. And it links together health and secluded places. But in this case, the Sun is the 6th Lord. So it's going to be trying to meet those needs for service and daily attention in a sustainable way. So perhaps if you do have debts or burdens, how can the reality of restrictions help you take daily actions rather than it just becoming overwhelming? Perhaps the Sun is going to help us harness these restrictions of Aquarius. And so perhaps the question is, how can the Sun lead my daily practices to the highest evolution of all? Might be a reflection question for Pisces. And that brings us through the whole zodiac. and brings us to the end of this series on following the sun's transits through each Rashi and trying to understand them through the sun's transit. I hope that you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I certainly know that I have learned a lot about each Rashi, and it's helped me to reflect on how everybody experiences each Rashi differently depending on the layout of their own personal chart. So it gives you that chance to empathize with people going through different experiences. I'd love to hear your feedback about the sun traveling through Aquarius or about this solar transit series in general. So please feel free to reach out. And in the meantime, stay well, and I'll look forward to catching up with you the next time we get together on the Vedic Astrology Podcast. Okay. Bye for now, everyone. Bye.